it's good to hear.
You both have. Now, a few months ago, we brought you news of a revamp of federal electoral donation laws that were proposed by Parliament's regular committee on electoral matters. The arrangements for declaring donations were sweeping, and the government itself indicated it was eager to get on and legislate them. Well, in the meantime, committee member and Teal independent Kate Chaney has stolen a march. She's presented her own private members bill today. That has little chance of being passed, but the ideas in it are interesting enough. Kate Chaney joined us here a short time ago. Well, Kate Chaney, it's quite a day for you, standing on your feet in the chamber and introducing a private members bill for electoral reform. Now, just to summarise it for people, I suppose at its centre would be a requirement to declare all donations greater than $1,000 and to do so within 5 days of making a donation. What you don't seem to support, though, is any sort of limit or cap on campaign financing. Why not?
Well, actually, there are 3 pillars to the bill. First is around transparency and what you mentioned. Second is reducing financial influence. And third is levelling the playing field. Now, under reducing financial influence, caps is one way of doing that. But there are a lot of really different views on what fair caps would look like. So we've gone for some more baseline reforms that have broad agreement as a first step in that direction. So that includes banning donations from social harm industries, banning donations from government contractors, and also requiring shareholder or member approval for corporate or union donations.
Now, you fully declared, to your great credit, you ran a $975,000 campaign to get elected. Wouldn't you be better placed to level the playing field if that did not apply to quite so many people? You were fortunate to raise that money, but you could have more worthy candidates seeking public office if there was a ceiling. Are you attracted in any way to that?
It sounds great in theory, and I started out with that approach. But the more you look at it, the more you realise that it's very, very hard to get your name out there so that there is name recognition. And there are 13 party advantages and 5 incumbency advantages built into our system, which is why a big part of the bill was levelling the playing field and stopping things like government ad campaigns before elections.
Yeah.
So getting those, getting the playing field as level as possible first means that if we do apply caps, then they're actually more likely to make it fair rather than just embed the existing 2-party system.
Often when these sort of reforms come up with the major parties, they're also leaving themselves quite open to an increase in public funding, that is dollars per primary vote. Obviously that favours incumbents, but what's your own attitude towards a greater mix of public funding into campaigns?
In theory, it's good because it means that you're not relying on private or corporate donations, but it's really hard in practice. So as an independent, I knew that I'd be reimbursed some money after the election based on my votes, but I didn't know how many votes I was going to get, so I wasn't prepared to rely on that. So as it turned out, you get the amount after the election, which is not actually useful for that campaign. And then as an independent, you then have to pay tax on it. So it does really embed incumbents. Right. And I think if we were to have greater public funding, we'd need to think very carefully about who that funding goes to. All
right, let's go to something you've already mentioned, Kate Chaney. That is social harm industries and your recommendation that companies within those industries be banned outright from making donations. Now, you currently suggest gambling, alcohol and tobacco, but who in your design of this would decide what other social harm industries could fall into the net? Sugar, big tech, maybe one day in the future, even Ampol, Shell, BP. Who would decide this?
Well, it's a tricky balance and it needs to be based on community views at the time. So the Greens have a stronger version that they want to put in there that bans donations from fossil fuel companies, property developers and banks. I've really looked at, because I've been trying to build really broad support across independents, and also civil society organisations, democracy think tanks. I've started with the things that I think would have broad support, which is tobacco, gambling and alcohol. And last year, alcohol and gambling companies donated $2 million to the major political parties. And I think people see that that is not delivering the policy outcomes we want. So the community opinions will shift over time about where the line is to be drawn, but we've started at the easy end.
All right. Now, you also tackle truth in political advertising, which is always fraught, isn't it, when it comes to the doing of it. Who would decide in real time effectively? I'm looking at like the last 2 weeks of a campaign when things typically heat up. Who's going to decide what is factual or otherwise? Should it be the AEC?
It could be the AEC, and that's the model that's put forward. And the reality is, if you're running a business, you're not allowed to engage in misleading and deceptive conduct and tell lies. But if you're running a political campaign, there's nothing to stop you telling lies. And I don't think that does anything for the trust in our political institutions. So the independence of that panel would be really important. The AEC has a great reputation. I think you'd need to set it up as a separate part of the AEC to protect the integrity of the stuff that it already has a really strong reputation for.
Yeah, so there would be risks to its independence if it's making daily calls on dozens, if not hundreds of ads, would you acknowledge?
It would need to take a very conservative approach. So I think it would not, it would only look at things that are facts, that are being held out to be facts that can be disproven, and take, you know, a conservative approach to what is prevented.
Yeah.
But I think that in this day and age, people do want to be able to trust what they hear from political candidates when it's being presented as fact.
It sounds reasonable when you put it like that. It's strange to see that it's sometimes controversial in this country and particularly in America. There's a lot of food for thought contained in this private members bill. You've got first mover advantage, Kate Chaney. Let's see what this parliament decides as it goes on. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks very much, Greg.